Om Yatagnurdhika Shakti Ramakrishne Stitahiya Sarvavidya Swarupam Tam Sharadam Pranamamyaham. Our eternal salutations to Sri Sharada Devi, who is the embodiment of all knowledge and the dispenser of knowledge, and who exists in Sri Ramakrishna as the burning power exists in fire. Om Sahana. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tirtasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all living beings. Om Hari Om. So, to catch up those who are attending this series for the first time, we're launching into the fourth verse of Babaji's encomium in praise of self-effort, in praise of spiritual discipline. And it's 58 verses, and by studying all of these, which I encourage everyone to contact Babaji and say, yeah, I want to study these with you. It's available as an email study. Anyway, so we're launching into the fourth verse, and this encomium was written as a way of pulling together innumerable systems. Almost every verse of this Stotram, Sutra, whatever you want to call it, has a minimum of 2, and many of them have 3, and a few of them have 4 systems. And so it's like you hear it, and then if you've studied this before, or at least heard the list, then it perks your mind, and you can have this great contemplation and make insights by combining these. Now, all of these teachings started out as a book called Sword of the Goddess, and each chapter was either a system talking about challenges that we face in relativity, or it was a solution to those challenges. And the verses are actually set up in that sort of way. It presents impediments that we encounter, and then it gives the solution for it, because there's numerous solutions in the way that we study here in SRV, because we're not limited to just Vedanta philosophically or to yoga philosophically, but we get Samkhya and we get Tantra and we get Yoga Vishishta and all of these, and they all get come together, which is really the way Sri Ramakrishna taught in his lifetime. And if you read the gospel, if you don't know these different systems, if you're not if you haven't heard of them and come across them, then it might just kind of go right by you that he's actually pulling from all these different threads of the grand tapestry that is Mother India's gift to humanity. So, with that introduction, let me go ahead and share the screen for, oh, hang on one second. Let me get it better prepared than this. We're going to look at the last 2 verses. Here we go. And this is a sunset outside of Cadernaut here in Hawaii. So let's just look at 3 and 4. And those of you who want, go ahead and take a screenshot and you can look at the other two later. We also have the a full PDF of all 58 verses. So, upon opening my eyes on the universe, the three worlds appeared magically, enticing me with promise. I took refuge in the two highest supreme blessings and was still and content. So we went through this in great detail last week, but to just give a quick review, upon opening my eyes on the universe, the three worlds, so that's the absolute, the subtle, and the physical realms. And they appeared magically. You just open your eyes, you come out of deep sleep into dreaming, into waking, and voila, it's all there, enticing me with promise. So this means that there is desire and there's all these objects to encounter, whether as something to possess, which is going to be problematic and will carry karma with it, good, bad, and mixed, or to be the witness of. Now, the one who is speaking out in this encomium is somebody who is already enlightened and has taken another lifetime for the benefit of others, no doubt, and is remembering all these different stages of coming out of formlessness into the subtle realms and just little by little taking on more and more conditionings, but he's doing it from the standpoint of knowledge. So these things are not tripping up, but he has many lifetimes of memory, seeing how he was or she was had the experience of the impediments and then had the experience of breaking through them through spiritual practices. So let's look at the next one. So, wondering at the nature of these worlds and their offshoots, I came to know of the three eternal gateways. Abandoning unrighteousness, I resorted to the two kinds of knowledge and attained the four fruits of life. So let's just look at this briefly so that we kind of have a map of what the rest of this class is going to be like. So, wondering at the nature of these worlds and their offshoots. So here's where we can think about what is the nature of these worlds. The nature of these worlds are phenomenal, whether we're up at the causal level, which is just unmanifested nature, capital N, or it's the gunas coming out of equilibrium and spilling forth everything from the subtle to the gross to the physical. That's what I mean by gross. And what does that bring with it? It's the curtain of nescience, it's Maya, it's the 8 occult powers, different kinds of desires that come with it. There's the 6 passions, there's the 8 fetters, there's the 5 kleshas. Don't worry, we don't have to go into all of these. But the 6 passions are things like anger, lust, greed, jealousy, and so forth. The 8 fetters are things like shame, pride of caste, pride of lineage, secrecy, and other items. The 5 kleshas are ignorance, egotism, attachment, aversion, and clinging to life or fear of death. All of these just come together as we step out of formless into this phenomenal realm. And if we're not keeping awareness of our source, of the source of our nature as Atman and Brahman, then this is so hard to see through. Even for the divine incarnations, this is hard to see through. And so we always talk about, seeing Atman in everything. And some of you may know the anecdote about Swami Shardananda, a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. he went by the pre-monastic name of Sharat. And Sri Ramakrishna spoke to him at one point because he had been sort of doling out these boons, these spiritual boons to the other disciples. And he said, "But you haven't asked for anything. What do you want?" And he said, "I want to see God in everything." And Sri Ramakrishna's reply was, that's very, that's the, that's the last word in spirituality here on earth. You're going to have to wait for that. And he said, "Then I will wait." So the idea is that it's a very, very high attainment. So then looking at the next, so the three eternal gateways are adharma, dharma, and swadharma. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time on that. And abandoning unrighteousness, which the word in Sanskrit for that is adharma, I resorted to the two kinds of knowledge, higher knowledge and lower knowledge. Knowledge of reality versus knowledge of the world. And these, well, we'll get more into that too. So he resorted to that and attained the four fruits of life. And those who don't know what the four fruits of life are, those are dharma, again, spiritual life and teachings, and then followed by right livelihood. So right livelihood, which is the legitimate acquisition of wealth by right means, and then followed by legitimate satisfaction of earthly legitimate desires, and finally liberation, spiritual emancipation. So we may or may not get to that. I know that we've had a lot of teachings on that teaching recently. We may touch on it if we have time. So keep that in mind. And now we're going to launch into this. So also a little bit of background. In fact, let me pull up that first chart. Well, no, let me talk about it a little bit first. So in the tradition of India, the idea of cosmic, heavenly, earthly harmony was very, very important. And I know that this is true of other traditions too. In the Chinese traditions, we hear about heavenly harmony. But this kind of harmony was very, very important. And the rishis, the ancient rishis and the sages across millennia in India observed the kinds of pathways that people would take through which they either attained the world and stopped there, or they passed through the world with integrity and aspiration, and they realized liberation. And so they looked also at all the ways that led to suffering for individuals and society. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the third chapter, Sri Krishna speaks in detail about the wheel of harmony and how it's based in sacrifice. And for those of us here who are not well versed in what India means by sacrifice, this sacrifice brings with it the sense of offering and the sense of worship and reverence. It's not just something that's painful to do and you do it because it's right. So here's a very beautiful section out of chapter 3, where Sri Krishna says, "Having created mankind in the beginning, together with yagya," that's the word for sacrifice, yagya, Prajapati, the great sage who teaches the gods and the human beings, he said, "By this sacrifice, By this shall you propagate. This will be the milk cow of your desires. Cherish the gods with this, and may those gods, which also includes the goddesses, and may those gods cherish you. Thus, cherishing one another, you shall reap the supreme good. Cherished by Yagya, the gods shall bestow on you the enjoyments you desire. A thief, verily, is one who enjoys what is given by them without returning them anything. The good, who eat the remains of sacrifice, are freed from all sins. But the sinful ones, who cook food only for themselves, verily eat sin. From food, beings become. From rain is food produced. From sacrifice, rain proceeds. Sacrifice is born of karma, meaning action. Know karma, action, to have risen from the Veda, and the Veda from the imperishable reality. The all-pervading Veda is, therefore, ever centered in sacrifice. The one who does not follow on earth the wheel thus revolving, sinful of life and rejoicing in the senses, he lives in vain. But the wise one who rejoices in the self, capital S, is satisfied with the self and is centered in the self. For that one, verily, there is no obligatory duty. So just a synopsis of some of the hidden meanings in this is that the devas represent the cosmic forces that have been deified. So these are the powers behind our senses. The sense of hearing has a little god that's the power that comes out from it. And that little god enjoys, through your sense of hearing, the sense of taste, likewise, which is related to the god of water. The sense of seeing, that has a little Agni deity, fire deity, is the power behind the eyes, and so forth. So the idea is that all these forces, and also the gods of rain and the gods of the wind, and all of these cosmic forces that they reverently deify, are responsible for everything that happens. And since we are interacting with them, not only in the subtle level by using our senses, but also encountering them in their manifestation as fire, as wind, as water, as rain from the sky, then it behooves us to keep this harmony going. And so sacrifices were done. One would never eat food without invoking the deities and offering them a portion of what was eaten. So it's then very telling in this view that he says, from food, creatures come. But in order to get food, rain has to fall. And in order to get rain, we have to keep up this cosmic harmony. And in order to do that, have that cosmic harmony, we have to engage in sacrifice. And this sacrifice is our action in the world. And we can think about the 5 kinds of sacrifices as the daily actions that we should be undertaking. These would be the actions of worship of God, of worship of the great teachers. That worship or sacrifice is done by studying their teachings. Sacrifice to other human beings through the services that human beings need for daily sustenance, etc. Sacrifice to the lower beings, and so forth. So these are our actions. And when we keep this sense of selfless action, selfless sacrifice and giving, then this harmony takes place. So now let's take a look at, keeping that in mind, let's take a look at this chart on the three eternal gateways. There it is. It's the three eternal gateways through which we find the four veiled doorways and the four fundamental paths of life. Let's take a look first at the four fundamental paths of life. One is the worldly path. The other is the path of dualism, Advaita. And there are religions that are primarily dualistic, at least that's the emphasis that we see. And and all of them will have a yogic path that is transformative. So pathways that are dualistic, and that dualistic means that the individual and God are separate. The individual relies on God, would not exist without God, but they remain separate. And this is a philosophical position that people are bound to take when they see God as separate and everything else as separate. And it's kind of the first stepping stone in the path of spirituality. But as they focus and come into a closer and more intimate relationship with God, then they begin to feel that presence within them. And then it shifts into being what we call qualified, non-dualistic. And that happens through the path of transformation, which also exists in the path of dualism. You can follow the path of dualism, a religious path that's dualistic, and not engage in transformation. And that's actually when we kind of see it on this other side. And we'll talk more about that. So there's the worldly path, which is, no spirituality. Then there's the path of dualism, where we see God as separate from ourselves. Then there's the path of transformation that helps shift us into, oh, God is present within me as well as outside. And then there's Advaita, the way of non-dual abidance. So now let's take a look at the four veiled pathways. Let me see if I had some notes to myself. I'm going to combine this with some notes that I took and put them in chart form from Babaji's chapter from Sword of the Goddess. This is a manuscript on the three eternal gateways. And one of the opening lines that he makes is that, actually, let me see if it's part of my notes. Not yet. Okay. So he writes, even in the endless flow of countless lifetimes in samsara, that's life lived in ignorance of the true self, and repetitively, birth is followed by death, and death is followed by rebirth, and so on for eons. Even in the endless flow of countless lifetimes in samsara, existence in ignorance, there will come a time when awakening to higher consciousness will occur, and the truth will be known. These three phases, ignorance, awakening, and knowing, are given specific names in the Vedic path, and they go by the names Adharma, Dharma, and Swadharma. And so this part is very interesting. So here we have Adharma, Dharma, and Swadharma. Adharma, in this case, is not only what we would call non-religiosity, non-religion, or atheism, but it's also going to include it will it also includes the more evil side of things. I'm trying to put this gently, but there's no gentle way to put it. So you can be a materialist and you can be a moral and ethical person, but you can be a materialist and commit evil acts, right? You can engage just in secular life, and you can do it from a moral and ethical standpoint, according to the social standards of wherever you live. But you can also be a secularist and be committing atrocities. You can follow religious convention, and you can follow it as a moral and ethical guideline. But you can also follow moral and ethical, follow religious convention in a way that um, twists the truth and makes uh, makes a big deal out of the smallest things in a way that causes harm to others. So, and I think we've looked at most of those. So all of those are falling under the title of adharma, in the sense that they do not lead to spirituality. People get stuck here. And when we talk about samsara, this is where it's happening, and people are not getting out. And it usually takes a great deal of suffering uh, or frustration. Think of um, Groundhog Day, the movie, before somebody is willing to break free of it and look higher. So this altogether, these constitute a worldly path. So there are people who follow religious convention, but it's just the convention. As Holy Mother would say, uh, where's their yearning? Where's their yearning for God? Uh, when they have yearning for God, then they come into this path of dualism or this path of yoga, whatever the tradition is. So the thing to know about secularism, the Sanskrit word here is pravriti marga. Marga is path, and pravriti means that the mind is going out, constantly going out and never coming back in. And materialism is actually quite similar. The thing that all of these have in common is taking the world to be real and themselves to be physical bodies. So let me now pull up my chart with notes. And I'm kind of putting them side by side. So from Babaji's chapter, we have the surface dharma and transformative dharma. So we can see that underneath this section that says adharma, and it's adharma because it's not leading anywhere, and people are getting stuck in it. We also have what appears like dharma. So that's what we would call surface dharma. So let's begin with this quote. What is the defining feature that reveals the real distinction between dharma and adharma? Since today's world is admittedly a mixture of insanity and genius, how can we call it either dharmic or adharmic? The real definitive distinction is twofold: that beings are out of balance with nature and out of touch with their true nature. The solution for being out of balance with nature is to return to nature with sensitivity and revere it as the earth goddess. The solution for the latter is to study the scriptures, pay heed to the holy ones, and plumb the depths of our nature in deep meditation to reveal our true spiritual essence. So here are different things that come out in his chapter. So dharma on the surface is how I listed this. is moral ethical living, mere righteous behavior, reverence for nature, and a balanced life. We can sort of link this up with sattva, that is seeking pleasure. You can see that moral ethical living and mere righteous behavior in conformity to society, along with a love for nature, and then leading kind of, just sort of a happy, balanced life, can still just remain on the surface. Life here is predicated on seeking pleasure and its resulting happiness. It also can include a secular approach to study. They're not looking at things divine in a divine way, that all of these are divine manifestations. And the examination of the universe and its contents. So look back here, secularism, materialism, it's an examination of the universe and its contents, and that engagement is the entirety of one's life, basically. And so then he goes on and he talks about how a social order based on pleasure and happiness has very serious drawbacks, and these are that it affords little protection from negative powers that are present in the universal scheme of things. So we're living in the relative world, and in this world, there's always positive and negative. There's all the dualities. There's life and death. There's sickness and health. There's happiness and sorrow, virtue and vice. All of these are manifesting around us all the time. And if we only have a society that's based on seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, then we don't learn how to transcend. We don't learn how to accept that these dualities exist and learn that we are actually ultimately separate from it. So it doesn't give us a way to forbear very easily. And if it's only based on pleasure and happiness, then generally nature is being used instead of being revered. And so we face threats and crises every day because of this desire for pleasure is subconsciously, at least, dominating our interactions with situations and with people and with institutions, etc. Then we're always jockeying for position, and we feel a sense of threat because we personalize everything. So we face threats and crises every day if our social order is based on this. And we can take it from individual to collective. If the individuals are all acting this way, then we're creating problems in the collective that we see today, such as the great disparity between those who have and those who do not have. So the social fabric deteriorates. The world gets plunged into cycles of dark ages replete with catastrophes, including even the loss of our secular knowledge, scientific knowledge, how to do things, etc. So let's take a look now at Dharma as transformation. So this would include the moral and ethical living, the righteous behavior, and reverence for nature, and a balanced life, but it's imbued with true religion that is known to be inseparable from spirituality. And again, this is being presented not as just a Vedic, not just an Indian thing, but in all the different traditions around the world. You will see that there are very special people, teachers, saints, sages, aspiring human beings. They're very special beings that live like this in their respective tradition. Here, life is predicated on purificatory exercises exercises spiritual disciplines that refine the mind, that purify it of egotism, of pride, arrogance, anger, hatred, etc. It includes the study of higher wisdom of one's tradition. There's detachment from sensual indulgence, because it's well known that this attachment to sensual indulgence creates a longing for more and becomes a distraction from getting to the root of our nature, or returning to our source, or perceiving God and loving God. Renunciation of attachment to material things, and it includes adherence to time-tested eternal principles, which are known to be God's laws in each tradition. So, what is the benefit of a true dharmic society in this sense? It is lit up with insight and inspiration, and it faces the forces of duality, or the forces of negativity, in characteristic fashion. It comes from a place of strength. So let's take a look at a full quote now out of that chapter. In a pleasure-based, materially fixated, or hedonistic world or culture, the embodied souls involved are not only duped as to what reality truly is, they suffer the cycles of pleasure and pain and the round of birth and death without gleaning any essence or true meaning from existence. Okay, so now this is something we hear very frequently from Babaji, and we even had an entire seminar on it, extracting essence out of everyday life, that we should be learning something. You know, from action should come knowledge, Swami Vivekananda says. And from knowledge, we should get truth. It should help us arrive at truth. So if we are duped about the nature of reality, that it's indivisible, that it's divine, that it is pure consciousness, that it pre-exists all cycles of nature and of, creation, preservation, and destruction, that it pre-exists space, time, and causation, then if we do not have a clue into that, then we're going to take time to be real. We're going to take bodies to be real. We're going to take pleasure and pain to be real. And we're just going to go on this cycle, rotating back and forth without gleaning any real meaning from our existence. This renders beings helpless against the ravages of time, decay, suffering, and death, and sends them again and again into the trap of Maya. So take a look at all this path under the list of adharma, and let's call it superficial dharma, that all of these things are either, we get hung up on taking the world to be real by focusing here, and having society focus in on this makes it very hard for people to rise out of it. So now, under Dharma as transformation, those who choose to live in conscious awareness of their true nature, and this can be done even amidst the dire imperatives of a dark age, know that the nature of the universe to be transitory and fleeting, and quickly gather the nectar of non-dual wisdom and the gems of love and devotion for God to the exclusion of all else. This message was given in several ways by Jesus when he stated, "Seek thee first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added unto thee. And grant unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but take unto thyself what is given by the Lord." So I just want to say in advance before we get to it, because some of this is kind of heavy, especially since almost all of us have families, are working in the world, We're trying to get settled in our careers, uh, grow our families, and do our best by society, as well as maintain a spiritual practice. That we haven't yet gotten to the two kinds of knowledge, the lower knowledge and the higher knowledge. And one of the gifts, one of the boons of Vedic society is how to hold these within the homogeneous, indivisible reality, that flow of divine wisdom. All knowledge belongs to the divine mother of the universe, is our way of saying it. And she permeates everything, all, from the very beginning, this intelligence, this divine dynamic intelligence, it's everything in this existence, good, bad, and mixed, is shot through and through with the presence of this. It's just how much is it covered? So this teaching of the two forms of knowledge that the poet is taking refuge in is to be linked with another teaching, which is called Abhyudaya and Nishrayasa, which are the highest good of all beings and material welfare for all. So the rishis, again, in this balanced view of harmony of existence, this wheel of harmony that we must maintain, did not see uh, practical knowledge as any problem at all. It was just to be in service of the higher knowledge at all times. And this practical knowledge, whether it's scientific, intellectual, whether it's the humanities, the social sciences, mathematics, all of these things were ways to engage in that sacrifice to humanity, and in these days also subhuman species, the animals, etc. So we'll get into that more. But with that kind of, I just wanted to say that because some of this was heavy. Let's look at this last summarizing quote here. In defining Dharma and applying it to a composite philosophy of life, we must be careful not to interpret it as a complacent lifestyle, where all looks good on the surface, while underlying lurks manifold danger. And given that these problems that are inherent in relative existence are potential and emerging every day, we should look to our reliance upon Dharma to mean strength in the face of adversity and spiritual striving during times of peace and prosperity. This is what dignifies human existence and forms the distinction between Dharma and what masquerades for Dharma. So I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions or comments before we move forward. Okay, then. All right. So we're going to launch into that part of the verse that talks about abandoning unrighteousness, adharma. I resorted to the two kinds of knowledge and attained the four fruits of life. And we're going to talk a little bit more about dharma, para and aparavidya. So para means supreme knowledge. And apara means earthly knowledge, that knowledge pertaining to relative existence, to phenomenal existence. And there's some nuances to all of this. I also wanted to mention that we see this showing up also in Christianity. where this wisdom is referred to as Sophia. And I'm just going to read something that I found in Wikipedia. So the word Sophia is a central idea in Hellenistic philosophy and religion, in, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Platonism, Gnosticism, and Christian theology, originally carrying a meaning of cleverness or skill. The later meaning of the term, close to the meaning of wisdom, intelligence, was significantly shaped by the term philosophy, which means love of wisdom, as it was used by Plato. In the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church, the feminine personification of divine wisdom as holy wisdom can refer either to Jesus Christ or the Word of God or to the Holy Spirit. Very interesting. So holy wisdom is still, the feminine personification is known as holy wisdom, and it can refer to Jesus, to the Word of God, and to the Holy Spirit. And it's also good to note that in Vedic society, before a student begins their studies, they invoke Saraswati, which is, for those who were online during the Arati portion, that we played Saraswati, Vani Saraswati. And let me just read this one section. She's the holder of the sacred Veena, and she's the embodiment of the Vedanta science and scriptures. She's the goddess of all speech and knowledge, all speech and knowledge. So both para and apara. She's the supreme goddess who pervades the entire universe for her innate primordial power. And I just realized, let me show this beautiful image of Mother. Here's a depiction of Goddess Saraswati. And one of the things to notice about her is that the peacock, which represents the glitter of the world, is moving behind her. Usually it's shown behind her. So she has transcended that. And two of her hands are on the Veena, so that represents the arts. And her hand holding a book represents all the different sciences, including scriptural sciences. And her upper hand holds the holy japa beads, by which, how does it put here? By which she saves the devotees from the ocean of relative existence. And so the thing that's pertinent about this is that the highest of her hands here is holding the japa beads, which signify direct spiritual experience. And the others signify, well, that signifies that that's the highest. Let's put it that way. So now let's take a look at what is included in aparavidya. All understanding, all knowledge that is gleaned through the experience of the universe and is concentrated upon its various constituents, all the different aspects. Think the 24 cosmic principles and how they manifest out in this phenomenal universe. All of those form the content of lower knowledge, aparavidya, or which is sometimes called secondary knowledge. So what is paravidya? So there are two views. In the first view, it assigns the spiritual arts such as rites and rituals, worship, devotion, study of scriptures, recitation of the holy names, divine discourse, religious austerities, meditation, and other religious disciplines. That's assigned to this to paravidya in this view. But there's another view, rather, view B, let's call it, that it only refers to that direct spiritual knowledge. So so out of the chapter on para and aparavidya, we have this statement. In fact, I think I want to share it with you so that you can read along. You see all my notes here. Paravidya is a type of knowledge or knowing that is eternal, immutable, and absolute, that it exists anterior to the creation of the universe and is ever one and indivisible. It exists anterior, that means prior to the universe, and is ever one and indivisible. Further, since it does not undergo growth and does not originate from any beginning or experience decay or death, the wise propose that this perennial wisdom is none other than non-dual truth. It is inseparable from the very heart of limitless existence and is the distilled essence of what humanity worships as the supreme being or God. To think of God in this way is extremely healthy, for no binding personality or individual name or conceptual form clouds the issue. Here, there is no political, religious, or social conventions, nor is there any human intervention that can confuse the mind with various dualistic propositions. God as eternal truth remains unified and ever free, stainless, taintless, birthless, deathless, boundless, inseparable, and perpetually blissful. So this is the other view of Paravidya. It's this one ultimate eternal truth. And then we go on, and Babaji talks about how this indescribably pure truth gets reflected through the universe in Satkarya fashion. Okay, what I mean by Satkarya is that the effects are all manifestations of the cause, right? Which means then that the effects can be folded back into the cause. So I finally now see that there's a hand raised. Just to let you know, I do better with sound than a visual cue. So go ahead. Who has a question?
Namaste, Annapurna.
Namaste.
I was just, that made me think or wonder if Paravidya, then that knowledge, like all other knowledge can be put into language and words, but Paravidya seems like this knowledge that's only experiential. It's only something that you can know within yourself. It's like maybe like an illumined being can transmit it through teachings, but it still can't be spoken of, really. Am I kind of
Yes.
on the right track with that?
Yes. Yes. And then we have to be a little careful when we use words like experience, because if there's an experience, then that's already objectified. So this eternal truth, if it's unified, it's indivisible.
Right. Maybe a better word would be abiding
Yeah.
within self, because it's more than
Well,
experiential. There again, it's just I can't put words to it. So.
well, I was just clarifying it because just so that everybody knows. But when we're using words, we can't help but speak in terms of subject object. It just comes out that way, and that's why it seems like we get all this one-upsmanship in Vedic study in Vedanta, right? You have Turiya. I mean, that's the ultimate, right? It's homogeneous, it's indivisible, it's one without a second. And then the next thing you know, somebody's proposing Turiya Tita, beyond Turiya, just to make sure that we're not bifurcating it somehow, or thinking that if we talk about it, that we think that's it, right? So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. It's good to get questions. So, we're actually coming to the end here, and there was a whole other thing that I wanted to show. You know what? If those of you who have the ability to do a screenshot, let me share this particular image, and you can look at it for next week. I've showed it before, but it's been several years. Share screen. But going back to this idea of universal harmony through the practice of sacrifice and yogic practice, here's one of the ways that Vedic society wove it all together, that the four ideals of life, which are the four fruits of life, are connected to the four stages of life. And then, as a kind of modern way of expressing this, for those of us who are trying to bring the Vedanta into our day-to-day life, our everyday life, and live the life of a yogic householder or a yogic vanaprastin or a yogic student, um, we can take a look at this Ashanatrayam to Dharmatrayam. Those of us who have a family or want to have a family, how do we do this? So anyway, go ahead and take that screenshot and think about this, and then we'll um, talk about that next week with the rest of para and apara, and then move on to the next verse, which is also quite related. Wondering at the nature of these, whoops, oh, I didn't put it in there. Well, I'll tell you what it is. Yeah, the next verse is, coming to know of people's attachment to lower knowledge, I perceived the two types of ego. Seeking maturity, I plunged into the two great philosophical streams to be free of ownership and agency. So yeah, so we can combine, it's easy to combine this verse with the one above it, because the attachment to lower knowledge is what unfortunately puts us in a difficult position with regards to materialistic society if we're not keeping the yogic view, the dharmic view in mind. So there we have it. Now, go ahead and, if everyone's muted, go ahead and chant with me. Om Asato, Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamoya, Abira Bira Maiti, Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukam, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from the illusion of death to realization of eternal existence. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all living beings. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.